All right, I have started the recording. Go ahead, Rick. You're on.
You sure?
Yes.
Okay, welcome to the New England Real Estate Journal and South Shore Chamber of Commerce South of Boston webinar series. I'm Rick Kaplan, and I'd like to thank everyone for attending and speaking today. Now I'd like to thank all of our sponsors, our platinum sponsors, Ellis Realty Advisors, A.W. Perry, Atlantic Mechanical Contractors, as you see on the screen, our gold sponsors, Acela Construction Corporation, Rockland Trust Bank, Jack Conway Realtors, Green International Affiliates, Axiom Architects, NEREJ Service Company, our corporate sponsors, Inspired Technology, U.S. Pavement, Cape Cod 5, First Citizens Federal Credit Union, and Platinum Partners and Northmark. And there's our speakers for today. And now I'd like to turn it over to our incredible Courtney Bergot from the South Shore Chamber of Commerce. There you go, Courtney.
Thank you, Rick. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This is our third session in the South of Boston Summit. I just want to thank you all for attending. I want to thank our speakers for joining us today. We have a great lineup. Today, we're going to hear a little bit about retail in the suburbs, really, and what's happening in our region, south of Boston. We're joined at first here by John Hurst, who's the president of the Massachusetts Retailers Association. And then we will hear individually from some of our larger retail centers in the region, Kingston Collection, Hanover Crossing, and Derby Street Shop. So I want to thank you all for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and just take a moment to introduce John, and then I'll turn the floor right over to him. So John has been the president of the Retailers Association of Massachusetts since 1990. RAM has 4,000 members of all types and sizes and has over 100 years served as the voice of retailing for the industry with the public and public policy leaders. Besides leading the public policy and advocacy activities of RAM, John and his staff also work to provide a wide variety of small business education and cost-saving services for their members. John, I'm going to go ahead and turn the floor over to you to talk a little bit more about retail.
Good morning. Thank you, Courtney. And let me say, first of all, I really appreciate the opportunity to join you this morning. We have our organization, the Retailers Association of Massachusetts, has a long relationship with the South Shore Chamber, one of the best chambers in the state. And certainly we have I personally have a long relationship. I'm afraid to say over 30 years with Peter Foreman. Just been a great friend and great advocate on behalf of employers, both when he was in the legislature and all these years with the South Shore Chamber. So it's especially pleasing to join you this morning for this important forum. Look, the retailing industry, sometimes we're overlooked a little bit compared to other industries in the state. But we certainly were not overlooked during this pandemic. I think there was disproportionate effects upon our industry, which employs about 17% of all jobs in the Commonwealth, and certainly we were affected with the downturn probably as much as any industry in the state. And that isn't to say that we didn't have winners and losers. Certainly a number of our members did better during the pandemic than they might have done before. And others were, you had that range from some being up double digits all the way down to members that were actually closed for a period of a couple months and longer, and off anywhere from 100% from a year ago to maybe 50 to 75% on average back in June, to progressively better recoveries. Things started turning around a little bit as consumers got a little more positive, and retailers were able to attract some of their customers back, and they reinvented themselves. And as the summer went on and folks got used to masks and social distancing and the like, by the time we got into the holiday season, although our average member was still off versus prior year, the holiday season was, we were down about 8%. The early part of this year, we're down more like about 5 or 6% in January and February. And now, as we move forward and compare with the prior year, we're looking at a far more optimistic standpoint. You look at the fact of where we are now with vaccines, the consumer feeling more positive with the change in weather and feeling far more comfortable and going out, and whether they're shopping and dining or doing various entertainment type of venues. That is getting better with each passing week. We've got to continue to expand on that. Massachusetts is still one of the most restrictive states in the country as far as occupancy levels. Over about 30 states now have gotten back, for at least for retailing, to about 30 states are back up to 100%. We're still at 50%, not including your employees. And we're hoping that we can, not only that it isn't so much that our members are seeing lines out the door, it's the fact of where we may be heading in the coming weeks as we reach that herd immunity and more consumers coming back out, particularly and feeling comfortable traveling and going to venues, on the South Shore or the Cape and elsewhere. We feel like, and we're asking the governor and the administration to consider getting us back to 100%, so we can better serve our customers as we approach Memorial Day. I've got a red circle around that Monday before Memorial Day weekend as a time that it will be very important for us to not only to get back to 100% to serve our customers, but also for a very positive public message back to our customers that yes, it is safe to come back out and shop and dine. Not only is it safe, but you won't have to worry about lines and worry about your safety. It's time to get back to some semblance of normalcy. During this pandemic, I was very concerned about the future of a lot of our members, whether they would be small members and large members. Early on, and as we surveyed our members, we certainly saw numbers as high as 30% questioning whether they would survive into 2021 and see the other side of the pandemic. And that was just within our membership. You've seen similar numbers nationwide and from other organizations as well. But they did what they needed to do. They reinvented themselves. It's amazing how many of our members, particularly our smaller members, that were way behind on things like selling online, as opposed to their larger competitors. I look back at the holiday season of 2019. Only about 25% of our members were actively selling online. The holiday season of 2020, just this past holiday season, it was over 50%. You look at that on top of other reinventions during the pandemic, including delivery and curbside pickup and by appointment only, meeting the consumer the way they wanted to be met and served in safe and high service levels. A lot of reinvention went on that over a course of months that otherwise would have taken years, and a lot of that is going to continue to survive. Certainly more are going to be selling online. It's interesting, here in Massachusetts, despite the pandemic, you look at the sales tax numbers beginning last June, even as stores were beginning to, those non-essential businesses were reopening. The sales tax numbers really started growing back in June, and really from June clear on to this most recent report, virtually every month, the sales tax numbers for tangible goods, which excludes automobiles and meals, were up on average 8 to 9% per month. So consumers were spending. The question is, where were they spending and on what and how? And the more that our actual brick and mortar locations were able to bring back more and more of those sales into their locations, both in the brick and mortar, whether it be curbside or inside the store, or pickup, or delivery, or internet, more and more of those numbers and those sales have been recovered with each passing month. And I've got to say, a lot of the government help, whether it was the PPP and also the state grants, helped as well to get them through to the end of the pandemic. 90% of our members applied and received the PPP in the first round, 57% in the second round, 20% applied for back in January, the state grants up to $75,000. All these efforts, all these grant programs were very helpful in helping them with fixed costs of rent and with inventory and other costs that were still out there. And a lot of the landlords also were extremely supportive, as we all know, in helping these small businesses and larger businesses see a tomorrow. I got to say, as we sit here in mid-April, I am very optimistic. I couldn't say that a year ago. I couldn't say that even last fall, or even a couple months ago. I feel very optimistic in what I'm hearing from our members. I think there's a lot of opportunity out there for some growth, new locations, being entrepreneurial. I was concerned in recent years, even before the pandemic, some drop off on the entrepreneurial spirit for small businesses in Massachusetts, because a lot of them saw their sales somewhat flat or even down, yet their costs were rising far faster than they should have. Some state mandates and other costs, health insurance and paid leave and minimum wages and so forth. But now I think there is an opportunity for them to expand their businesses, open new locations, maybe with smaller footprints, but they're going to be, the whole discussion has changed, the positive attitude has changed. And I'll say, I don't have a whole lot to go on other than our dues. We have 4,000 members, and here it is, as we sit in April, at worst, about 5% of our members did not make it through the pandemic, at worst. And some of them just haven't paid their dues and still will. You compare that to some of the projections last summer. It's a very good, positive story. Now, that doesn't mean that those 5% didn't maybe reduce a number of locations. Maybe they had 3 locations. Maybe today they have one or two. They certainly are watching the costs and cutting costs and meeting the consumer where the consumer wants to be and where the consumer is. So in areas like the South Shore, where the consumers are living, working, playing, it bodes well for those locations, as opposed to, obviously some of ours in Boston and elsewhere. Some of those numbers still have a long recovery time ahead of them. So with that, let me leave it at that, Courtney. I think the watchword here is a very positive outlook for the coming weeks and months and years to come for retail in Massachusetts.
Great. Thank you, John. Thank you very much for the overview and giving us a sense of kind of what you're seeing in your membership. And I'm going to open it up for Q&A later on. So I'm going to go ahead and just move to our first panel presenter, and that will be David Gilmour. David is the GM of Kingston Collection, which is a project down in Kingston under the Pyramid Management Group. Over his 25 years, he's worked for some of the most iconic brands, Dunkin' Donuts, Dairy Queen, Sbarro, Merlin Entertainments. David, I'm going to turn the floor over to you and ask you to start your video.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Courtney. Throughout this presentation, I really want to focus on a couple different things. There's some key words. So, talking about redevelopment, talking about evolution, and then talking about activation. Over the past many years, we've seen a downtrend in traffic in interior malls not only in Massachusetts, but throughout the country. So as a privately owned company, one of the things that we looked at is how we need to change and adapt to what the current landscape looks like. And, one of the first things that we started back in 2014 was redeveloping our property. Not only the building itself, but seriously looking at our tenant mix. We did not want to fall to the wayside like some of the malls, interior malls in our immediate market, where you focus just on big box retailers, the Macy's, the JCPenney's, the Sears, because we've seen what's happened there. So we look at that from a different perspective. So Courtney, if you can just go to the next slide. When we talk about redevelopment, so, some of the things that we've done is we've done some interior remodeling here at the center. We've made partnerships. We're looking at bringing hospitality into our property. So that'd be inserting. We've had approvals to insert a 110 key hotel here directly into the mall. And then, as many of you know, that we've started just shy of 300 residential apartments here on property that are expected to open in the first phase of May of 2022. But the other thing, as I mentioned, was redeveloping our tenant mix. We were one of the first centers or first companies in the country to bring in brands such as Pins, which is, bowling, restaurant, arcade, bringing in a trampoline park, bringing in Billy B's, partnering with Regal to completely remodel their theater and bring it up to RPX status. And when we look at this, we've seen some of the great success. Pins is now has over 5 locations in Kingston, houses the highest volume. Sky Zone, very high volume Sky Zone here, one of the top in their company. Fit Factory has over 12,000 members. So what we've been able to do is not only redevelop our center, but we've actually been able to redevelop our tenant mix. Courtney, if you can jump to the next slide. When we talk about evolution, the biggest, most exciting project that's happened in the town of Kingston for some years now is this residential development. So back in late 2018, we partnered with Tremel Crow Residential to start the process to bring the 300 apartment units here on property. We are now about 4 months into construction and have seen some great progress. And it's a couple key elements that have led to that success. Is it's not only the partnership that we've had with Tremel Crow, but it's also the partnership that we've created with the local community in the town of Kingston to bring this project to fruition. So we're really, really excited to do the $72 million investment here on property in Kingston. Courtney, if you can jump to the next slide. So this here is just kind of showing what the expectations of the finished product will look like. So there will be some outdoor areas, outdoor kitchens, community rooms, office workspaces, luxury studios, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments. We have obtained approval to bring this up to 4 stories. So those luxury 4th floor residential apartments will have a direct sight line out to the ocean. So just a beautiful project that we are about 15% completed with now. Courtney, if you can go to the next slide. The other thing is activation. As I mentioned, we've struggled, not just us, but all interior malls have struggled for many years. And one of the things that we have been able to do to keep us on the forefront of people's minds is activating the mall for social means. So we do a Halloween where, one year we have 3,000, next year Halloween's canceled for a couple of days, we have 7,000 people show up. We've brought in kids clubs, we've done prom fashion shows. It's just really making sure that we've always stayed on the forefront of people's minds, because again, we've had such significant traffic problems like every other interior space has throughout the market. Courtney, if you can jump to the next slide. One of the things that helps us drive our decision to invest the amount of money that we are here on property is the unbelievable, impressive housing growth, especially down on this end of the South Shore, with all the growth that's happening here on property, throughout Kingston, throughout Plymouth. It's just such a great time to be in this market. And with some of the spaces that are available, it's a great opportunity for people that are looking to expand their business to take advantage of. Courtney, if you can go to the next one. Plymouth Tourism. You know, we were all set up to celebrate Plymouth 400 last year, and we were expecting over 7 million tourists to come into the community. And it really hurt us. Not only did the pandemic, but the expectation that our retailers has that this tourism was going to bring to this market. The great news is that, you know, the project's not dead. They are still looking to do some celebrations. So we're hoping to see that tourism come back into the market. One of the greatest things that happened a couple months ago is with the Mayflower coming back, will really open up tourism for this coming summer. And we're really looking forward as the retailers are planning for it. If you can go to the next slide. You know, as you can see from this map, we in the entire South Shore, we have an abundance of retailers. You know, so going back to, you know, one of my first words was evolution. We have no choice but to evolve our property to meet the current terms. We're no longer looking for that one hour to 90-minute dwell time in the mall. We're looking to make it an entire experiential day for people. So because of our location from here to the Cape Cod, we're hoping that when our hotel comes on property, we're going to be a mid-overnight stay. There's movies, restaurants, Sky Zone, Billy B's. There's just so many different things to do. So we're looking to turn, let's call it an average 90-minute stay time into the center into a 4, 6, or 8 hour, or even overnight stay for people. You can go to the next slide. You know, this is just some of the headlines that not only Pyramid, the Kingston Collection, and other markets have done, but it actually just goes to that point of, you know, interior malls can no longer stay status quo. You need to evolve with the times. You know, we look at online sales, you know, the biggest online retailer just opened up a store with us, being Amazon 4-star, right? So they're looking at the fact that, you know, online is great, but you also need that brick and mortar where people can go and touch and feel. So, you know, keep your eyes open for these Amazon 4-star stores to open up. And again, it just goes to show that brick and mortar retail is here to stay. And even the biggest online retailer realizes that. You can just head to the next slide. So in closing, I just wanted to give you a little update of where we are. You know we've had those trying times year over year. But at this point in time, and these figures were before Sky Zone, Billy B's, and Pins was allowed to go full open and without Regal. We have returned to 65% of traffic of 2019, is a great feat for us. Now that we know that Regal is going to be opening on May 7th, Sky Zone's back, Billy B's, Pins all have the ability to operate at a larger capacity. You know, our expectations are that we will be back to 100% of 2019's traffic, and hopefully greater than that by the end of the year. So we're really excited about what's to come. We're really excited that we can help support local merchants. We're really excited for a great holiday season, and to put, I'm going to say 2 years, you know, all of 20 and then probably most of 2021 behind us, and move forward in the retail industry. And with that, Courtney, I'll hand it back to you.
Sorry, great. Thank you, David. So David really hits on a point that the chamber has been talking about for a few years now, and that's kind of the introduction of residential to, you know, mini retail spaces. But we're going to hear a little bit more about that later, and I have a couple questions later on down the line. But I'm going to go ahead and keep moving forward with some of the presentations and ask Ed and Lisa to join us on video, and we'll go to you guys next. All right, let's see, Ed. All right. All right, and I'm going to share your presentation here. All right, floor is yours.
Okay, can you hear me okay, Courtney? Very good. So thank you. My name is Ed Callahan. I'm the general manager of Hanover, formerly Hanover Mall and future Hanover Crossing. I just want to start out with an introduction. On behalf of Lisa, my colleague, myself, and Prep, I want to extend our thanks to the South Shore Chamber and New England Real Estate Journal for the opportunity to speak with all of you today. I want to personally thank the Chamber, Peter, Courtney, and Eric for all their support during our permitting, both local and state levels. It is greatly appreciated. Those folks came to our public meetings. They came to meetings with state officials with us, wrote support letters, took phone calls, and just about everything they could do as I reached out to them to help us guide through this pretty incredible redevelopment process. So just as a start, thank you for being such a great partner, South Shore Chamber. We greatly appreciate it. And I'm going to turn it over to Lisa at this point.
Very good. So Ed and I have worked together for 25 years at the property with 5 different management companies and owners, but it's been a lifelong journey with the asset formerly known as the Hanover Mall. But we're currently owned by and managed by Prep, or Prep Property Group. So I'll just give you a little background of who Prep is. In 1991, Prep evolved from Phillips Edison Company, which is now public, and grew to own over 340 anchored grocery shopping centers in 32 states, including locally the Shaw's supermarkets in Hanover and Cohasset. Prep had spun off of Phillips Edison, as our CEO, Michael Phillips, wanted to challenge focusing on a large opportunistic assets. Prep has a financial equity partner now called Almanac, who's investing $300 million into the Prep strategy. So as to why they bought the Hanover Mall, in October of 2016, Prep saw a great opportunity to purchase the center, as we were currently bank owned at the time. And they understood the property's great location, being at the intersections of both Route 53 and 3, with the high traffic counts, great visibility and accessibility to the site, as well as a proven retail location already. It has an excellent trade demographics with high barriers of entry for new redevelopment. So on the next slide, we'll show you the vision for the property. So Prep's vision to redevelop the former mall into an open air mixed use component with residential, of course. Entertainment will be an anchor, including a cinema, family entertainment, and restaurants. We wanted to add a strong grocer that will draw traffic consistently throughout the year as well. And Hanover Crossing will have both Trader Joe's and Market Basket. And this location gives us a great opportunity for a town-like center. In the center of the property, we'll have a green space that will be able to have gatherings and various events to draw more people together. And we're right-sizing the center. We're going to reduce the overall retail by about 200,000 square feet. We have partnered with the residential developer Hanover Company. The residential component is a tremendous attribute, as we're finding as we're talking to retail tenants. It's really a great attraction for them, and it satisfies a great need within our community. Hanover Company is headquartered in Houston, Texas. However, they've had much success in 24 projects, including 8 Eastern Massachusetts cities and towns. They stand as one of the most active, privately held multifamily development companies in the country, and their focus is on luxury rental properties. And they look for well-located mixed-use opportunities with good lifestyle options, near good jobs, easy highway access, and Hanover Crossing touches all those bases for them. So they'll construct 4 buildings consisting of 297 units, which are made up of 65% 1-bedroom, 30% 2-bedroom, and 5% 3-bedroom luxury apartments. And our expected completion date is 2023. Now on the next slide, Ed will tell you what we've been doing for the past couple of years.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. I mentioned the Chamber's help in working with us throughout the permitting process. And I think, you know, a lot of people on the call here recognize the challenges of, you know, particularly trying to permit a major redevelopment. I think we, as we go through this list, and many of you will, you know, realize some of the angst that it causes when you have to go through these things and the time it takes to get from the start to the finish. But I must say we did check all of these boxes. So Prep bought the property in late 2016. And, you know, with the acquisitions guys having a vision of, you know, changing the property to, you know, mixed use, open air. But, you know, the first year is, how do we do it? You know, where are the leases at? Who, you know, how do we demall in a proper fashion so we're ready for construction at the right point? In 2017, the first thing we did is we attained a TIF agreement with the town of Hanover through special town meeting for real estate tax breaks with future value increases. It's a 16-year TIF. Prep is able to monetize that money into capital in the beginning as well for the future savings. We utilize an existing what they call the Village Plan Unit Development Zoning Bylaw, which was our ability, a mechanism already existing in the zoning bylaws in Hanover to allow for the mixed use, allow for the residential. In order to be considered a VPUD, the first thing we had to do was to attain ZBA variances from the town of Hanover, both for the rate of development as well as building height variances. I must say, I guess the next step was we went to the planning board for the VPUD approval, and then the approval for the commercial layout and the residential layout. And this was, I guess, by far of all the things in the list I'm about to go over, was the most challenging to attain, because the sentiments on Prep adding the residential component, you know, and particularly apartments, and, you know, the stigma the word apartment can bring along with it, was quite a challenge. The public meetings got pretty dicey at some standpoint. The Facebook and social media chatter was tremendously both positive and negative. It was quite a feat. We also had to attain approvals from Hanover and Norwell Conservation. We do have land in both communities. We also had to go through Planning Board and ZBA in Norwell. We attained a MEPA certificate from the state of Massachusetts. We manage our own, operate and own our own private wastewater treatment facility because the town of Hanover does not have public sewer. So we also had to attain a permit from the Mass DEP to relocate the plant to a new location and to increase the gallons per day on the permit from 85,000 gallons a day to 130,000 gallons a day outside of what they call Zone 2. And some people, I won't go into that, but some people know what that means. We applied for and we were awarded a $1.3 million Mass Works grant for infrastructure improvements, including the new traffic signal and road and pedestrian improvements on Mill Street and Hanover Mall Drive. We also attained 13 liquor licenses through town meeting and the home rule petition for 10 full serve and 3 beer and wine licenses for the future use on our property specifically. And the last thing we did is we also removed a Peterson Pond Dam, which sits on the Third Herring Brook, which is splits the Hanover and the Norwell town line in essence. And we worked in conjunction with the
Ed? I think Ed might be frozen. Lisa, do you want to jump in here?
Sure. I'll go ahead.
We'll
So,
see if he hops back on.
okay, I think that was pretty much at the end. So onto slide 4, we can show you the milestones we've reached. As Ed had pointed out, the things we had to go through to get to these, but in 2020, we were in a good situation with the main focus being the demolition of the former property. So, and we had to start working on the initial site work. The COVID impact to our property was minimal compared to many others, retailers and other people in the industry. We were fortunate in the sense that the demolition of the 525,000 square feet of the center and anchors had just begun in early March. And we no longer had to, be concerned about closing down the shopping mall or taking care of the retailers. The 9 remaining outparcel national tenants were Macy's, Dick's Sporting Goods, Macy's Furniture, Mattress Firm, Office Max, Petco, Trader Joe's, Panera, and Buffalo. And with all of them being outparcels, they had the flexibility in their own locations and operations, what they needed to do to augment their business practices with curbside pickups and flexible hours. So then we went ahead and removed 3 of the 4 anchors, Walmart, Penny, and Sears, along with the former mall, leaving Macy's in place. And the Mass DEP BUD permit that was issued to us allowed for the reclamation of the concrete block and foundations for reuse on the property. So if you've driven by the main entrance of the mall, you've seen a huge mound in the front of the property, and that's resulted of that permit. And it's 20,500 cubic yards of concrete, as you see in the picture. And it's the base for our sidewalks and parking lots for the new center. To date, we've completed about 75% of our new utility infrastructure, engineering, and installation. And that includes brand new sewer, gas, electric, water, and communication lines. And the water line also includes a secondary new main off of Mill Street. And we began our wastewater construction, and that's anticipated to be completed in June. And we also turned over the pad sites to Market Basket and Chipotle, and they'll construct their own buildings. And Chipotle is gearing up for their grand opening, hopefully in May, and Market Basket by the end of the year. So if we can move to the next slide, we'll show you what 2021 will bring. Now that the good weather has started, we'll be able to complete the remaining 25% of our utility infrastructure over the next several months. The new wastewater treatment plant will be completed, and we'll finalize our property sale to the Hanover Company. And as a contingency to that sale, we'll decommission the existing wastewater treatment plant that resides on the parcel of land we're selling to them. And the residential construction will begin in the summer of 21, with being expected to finish by spring of 23. Prep will begin the new construction of our own retail buildings at the same time, along with the Showcase Cinemas. And they also have a goal of being opened by fall of 22 or spring 23. And now we'll turn it back to Ed. I guess.
I don't see him on here.
Yeah.
So we'll go ahead and circle back to him when he gets back online. But thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Ed, for the update on the project. As you all mentioned, we've been very involved with that and the project itself and kind of the hurdles that come along with doing a redevelopment of that size. So we're very excited to see the progress. I've driven by myself a few times and very happy to see it moving along. So I'm going to go ahead and hand the floor over to Brian Sierra real quick from WS Development. Derby Street shops. Brian is the SVP of leasing at WS Development. He's worked for the company for over 20 years. He originally leased Derby Street in the early 2000s, then Legacy Place, then Market Street in Linfield. He has been involved in retail development and leasing his entire 35-year career. Brian, the floor is yours, and I will start up your slides.
Thank you, Courtney. I really appreciate the time and the floor, and to echo everyone else. Thank you very much to the South Shore Chamber and the New England Real Estate Journal. This is a great forum to be able to share ideas and thoughts and everything that's going on the South Shore. I'll take a little bit different tact today. I'm going to talk about retail trends that are really, some retail trends are especially a huge one that's affecting all of us as we sit here today. And that's, if you can go to the next slide, Courtney. It's called direct to consumer, which we all now see and feel and touch every day with the Amazon trucks and FedEx trucks and UPS trucks that are flying everywhere around our highways and streets, and as well the digitally native brands that are starting to grow significantly, and how both of those are affecting our bricks and mortar retail, which we all, we've heard a lot of stories today of how people are evolving and how projects are evolving to deal with these big trends. Obviously, the biggest trend is direct to consumer, and the strength of online retail. Today, you can pick up your smartphone and with a few clicks, something is showing up on your doorstep. So what does that mean for all of us bricks and mortar developers and even a retailer? We both have to think about it in the same way. And it really comes down to looking beyond the four walls and who our customers are and how we're going to serve those customers and engage with those customers in meaningful ways. So what does your store look like? What does your retail project look like? And you've just seen a couple of examples of some neat things that are changing and adaptations that are going on in response to that. At the end of the day, engagement with your core customer is the key, and that's how you succeed. Because of that, while we're seeing this explosion of direct to consumer, aka Amazon, and really neat digitally native brands now doing bricks and mortar stores, we're seeing that that the bricks and mortar is actually more important than ever in this evolving retail world. There may be less bricks and mortar as time goes on, but the bricks and mortar that evolves and changes with the times is going to become more important than ever, because the consumer really wants to interact with that brand. And if you go to the next slide, Courtney, they all kind of so we'd start talking about the physical store and its importance and the importance of all these bricks and mortar projects, and it's that interaction with the brand that is so important. And the brand can be your project, the brand can be the retailers within your project, and how you pull the whole package together. So the brand image, as we become more virtual and able to do things with a few clicks, the brand image and how you interact with your customer on a bricks and mortar basis is going to become more and more important over time. And to the point where that bricks and mortar, to a large degree, is the last mile, and it's the consumer in a lot of cases who is going to be that last mile versus, as we are thinking about it right now, we're thinking about the Amazon truck or the FedEx truck or the UPS truck being the last mile. the consumer in a lot of cases will be the last mile, as a retailer picks those locations that are really important to them, where they can truly interact with their customer in meaningful ways. And then that customer becomes the last mile, whether they're buying something in the bricks and mortar store and taking it home, or they bought something online and they're returning it to that store. That the bricks and mortar will become more and more important over time. And that last mile that we all start hearing about a lot in the last few years. Another interesting thing with the direct-to-consumer brands and the digitally native brands, as it relates to bricks and mortar, is the bricks and mortar. The digitally native brands have figured out, if they are online only, that they have a ceiling of how much they can grow the company. When they put a bricks and mortar store within a market where they already see they have a bunch of customers, there is a halo effect that bricks and mortar store has on their online stores. You could pick Warby Parker, for example, has who's will be opening up in Derby Street shops soon, had a really strong online business in Boston, and they could see that in their online sales. They started adding bricks and mortar stores to that online presence, and the halo effect in the market went up even higher. So what they were getting out of Greater Boston prior to adding bricks and mortars has gone up significantly, 2, 3, 4 times when they add the bricks and mortars location. So the brick and mortar will become more and more important over time. It gives the retailer the ability to interact and engage with their customer on a more meaningful basis, instead of it just have it be that online presence. The omni-channel retailers is another thing that you'll hear a lot as it relates to direct-to-consumer and to digitally native brands. Really strong. The strongest retailers today are omni-channel. They're trying to create this seamless transaction with their customer, whether it be online, in-store, catalog, whatever the case may be. They're trying to create this seamless web, if you will, where they can serve their customer. And retailers that are doing that really well are really flourishing at this point in time. A really good example of that is the Sonoma brands, which is Williams-Sonoma, Pottery Barn, West Elm. I think most people would think of them predominantly as a bricks and mortar retailer, but they're actually 50-50 between bricks and mortar and online and virtual sales. So they've created this really strong network and a really strong company, and are really able to interact with their customer and on every level and create these seamless transactions. Lululemon is another tenant who has really done a great job of creating a seamless network of acquiring their product. Some other trends that we're seeing across all of our certainly right now, we're seeing the suburbs actually being benefactors of what happened in COVID for all the obvious reasons. People working remotely and all kinds of reasons. But we're seeing a lot of prior to the pandemic, we were seeing a lot of trends, and I think they're going to be even sped up to a much greater rate because of the pandemic. For example, we're seeing Black Fridays and that jammed, crazy month of December. We're starting to see that more, and because of all the reasons that I've talked about and more, we're seeing that phenomena that was Black Friday and those last 20-day sprint to Christmas. We're seeing that as a thing really downplayed over time. It's not as big a thing as it used to be. So we're seeing that shopping spread out over a longer period of time, and not that insanity on Black Friday and the days ensuing. So we're seeing that show up in sales that are spread out over time. As a result of that, and again, about a lot of the things that we're talking about, the digitally native brands, the direct-to-consumer brands, we're also seeing, and we're having a lot of towns in the suburbs relax their demands on parking and how much parking is required. As you think about it, you have people working from home, they have a little bit more flexibility of when they can go to and from and do their retail shopping and eating out and all that kind of stuff. They're spreading it out through the week. So we're seeing more steady traffic flow in our properties and our parking versus just it all jammed in on, as everybody tries to get everything done on just Saturday and Sunday. So we're seeing a lot of in the suburbs, municipalities relaxing and parking requirements and demands, and even encouraging us to densify in our suburban properties, because 99% time of the year plus we have these expansive parking fields that are just sitting there and not necessarily being used. Curbside pickup is another thing that's happening more on a regular basis. Remote waiting rooms is another thing from pandemic, and personal shopping times where people are getting text and saying, we're free now, come on in and we'll help you with personal shopping. Expanded outdoor dining has become certainly something that's more. Yeah, thank you, Courtney. I'm just blathering, and you can go to the next slide. This slide talks to what I was talking about earlier, where there's a lift in the brand sales when they open a bricks and mortar store, and the lift that they see with their core customers. And then you could go to the next slide, Courtney. These are just a bunch of brands that we've done business with. WS Development has done business with that do a really good job in the direct-to-consumer, the digitally native market, and now are at least, if not all of them, a good portion of them are aggressively working to open bricks and mortar stores at this time. And then you could go to the next slide. Derby Street opened up in 2004. So 2014, it went through its 10-year anniversary. So we're now at 16 years. Derby Street has been an amazing success for our company since the day that it has opened. And COVID, like any retail, anybody in retail, and during 2020, there was a lot of pain, which we don't need to go into. But the interesting that it did for Derby is typically we don't have any vacancy at all in a property like Derby, and because of COVID and some unfortunate retail casualties, we actually have a little bit of space to work with now, and we're upticking the mix and bringing in some new exciting brands, which will be which everyone will be seeing later this year. Warby Parker was an example I gave a little bit earlier, and we'll be announcing a bunch more here in the near future. Sherry and Caroline, who run the property here, who are on site every day, and a lot of what the other groups are talking about, we're figuring out every day how to engage with the community that we serve in very meaningful ways. How do we do things that go beyond just shopping? Because if you're in the commodity business today, it's a tough business to compete with. So how do you create an environment and an architecture and a place that people like being, and engage that customer and that community in meaningful ways? And Sherry and Caroline do an amazing job of that at Derby Street Shop, and we will continue to do that as time goes on. one last exciting thing. I think I just got a little bit of a hook from Courtney. Another trend that we're seeing is typically the chef-owned and chef-operated restaurants prior to the pandemic were, give me the city or give me death. I'm not coming out of the urban core. We're seeing that changing significantly. And at Derby Street Shops, we've convinced one of those exciting chefs and concepts to come to Derby Street with Shoujo Nomai, Brian Moy, and we'll be opening this summer. So another interesting trend where in a bunch of our projects, we have some restaurants that meet or exceed urban volumes, a lot of times exceed urban volumes. And so we're really doing some really neat, interesting food and beverage additions to a lot of our properties, including Derby Street. And I'll turn it back to you, Courtney.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Brian. Thank you for that presentation. And thank you to all of our panelists for joining us today. I'm going to go ahead and start your videos. The mic isn't open, but the Q&A session is open. And I have one question that I'm going to go ahead and ask first, and then I'll go to the audience, but I'm going to get you all back on video here. And one question that I have for you all, the Chamber has, for probably 5 or 6 years now, we have this economic development plan called South Shore 2030. And it's all about creating places. It's all about placemaking. And obviously, retail is a large component of that. And it really helps to kind of connect people to the community and to get people kind of engaged and involved. How have you guys seen in your roles and your work, kind of the idea of placemaking play out? So we've got the residences at, Kingston Collection and Hanover Mall or Hanover Crossing. Obviously, Derby has a very good mix of, kind of activities like spin classes, other storefronts, pop-up shops. How do you see your role kind of in the placemaking space? I'm gonna maybe go to John or Brian, I guess, to start, and then you guys can chime in, and then I'll open up the floor for Q&A.
Yeah, it's a great question, Courtney, and it's a lot of little things that add up to big things, and it begins with engagement. So whether you're a single store or a property like Derby Street, it's how are you engaging with the community that you're serving. So it is a lot of little things. It's the happy hours for the dog enthusiast. It's having great food and beverage so that that's an experience. A big buzzword in our industry over the years has been experiential. How can we create an experience, because that's how you have to compete in the retail world today if you're not in a commodity business. So it really boils down to engaging with the customer, having those outdoor spin classes, having the happy hours, having doing different things, and having retailers that know how to do the same thing, that know how to engage with their core customer.
Yeah, I would just add, Courtney, I agree 100% with Brian. I would just add that, and I'm a North Shore guy, but I see it up on, I'm sure it's happening on South Shore, but I certainly see it on the North Shore as well. I think there's a new opportunity here as well, not only for our destination type of shopping locations like we've been talking about this morning, but also a good opportunity for some of our main streets, quite frankly, to create that destination and events. And you're seeing some renewed efforts with whether it be Main Street organizations, chambers of commerce, really to create events and reasons to bring folks downtown. And it never really had much of never was an issue going to downtown Boston, right? But but you know, and frankly, a Plymouth, you know, with tourists and so forth. But you know, you're going to see more and more of these efforts, I think, of really creating, you know, people opportunities and events to get folks to stay in their neighborhoods, to stay in their local shopping areas, whether it be a shopping destination, shopping development area, or a Main Street shopping district, and try to revitalize those in the coming years.
Yeah, Courtney, I think those are all great points, and that's a lot of the actions that we take here. And you know, I think it's about the partnerships that you make as well within the local community, with local charitable organizations. But I also think with the town and being part of your community's economic development plan, and having an understanding that, you know, it's not always necessarily about your property, but it's what you can do to help the city or to help the local town officials. Because as we all know, they, for the most part, change out every 2, 3, 4 years, and it feels like we're retraining them on what they need in their community. You know, so I think one of the greatest things that the previous leadership team here in Kingston did was they landed an Amazon fulfillment center, you know, and what that does to our community and what that brings. So not only from drivers, but from employees into the market that are going to be, you know, less than a half a mile away from us, you know, 1,300 employees a day. So that drives traffic to you. So, you know, I think community partnerships across, you know, all disciplines is super important for any of us to continue to survive in this landscape.
Great, thank you. Thank you for indulging me in that question. One other question that I have for you all is kind of to touch on some of the entrepreneurial threads that have come out in some of these conversations, but, you know, both from the restaurant side and kind of up and coming brands, how do you kind of work with kind of that new entrepreneur or that new business that really wants to get into the space, but, you know, can't necessarily take on a traditional business model that you guys, you know, might have? How have you done that, or how do you see yourselves working with those entrepreneurs in the suburbs?
I think it's important that you create some form of a safety net for them, you know, whether it's COVID language in their lease, you know, you can get creative with the way that you write your leases, that's based off of performance. And I think it's, you know, from our perspective, you know, now's the opportunity, like you said, with restaurants. So for some of these people that are looking to get in the industry or go from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4 locations, but they don't have the $2 million, $3 million to build out a space, now's a great opportunity for them. And I hate to say that because it's at the peril of somebody else's business that was lost, but it is a great opportunity for these entrepreneurs, these restaurant owners, these retailers to come into a space that's already built out for them. And then again, just being creative with the way that you write things to give them that little bit of a safety net. I think COVID language, you know, I see everybody on the panel shaking their heads, you know, COVID language is something, or epidemic language is something that we never thought we would have to write into a lease, but now we're hearing back from retailers, from restaurant groups, that now it's mandatory that it's written into every one of their leases to give them that little bit of protection.
And if I could just add, you know, for years was worked with specialty retail in the property, and that was the trend for a long time. And then we got away from that as all the nationals came in. But from what I've read recently, you know, there's going to be a whole new surge of entrepreneurs coming up because they have lost their full-time jobs. So we're rethinking things during the pandemic. You know, a lot of creative ideas came out of it, people either starting to craft again or to get into the arts. And so I think we'll see a new surge of entrepreneurs coming on, looking for spaces. So working with them in pop-ups or, you know, mini markets and that kind of thing, I think will be the trend coming back.
And we've done a number of pop-ups at Derby Street this year, and we have a group in our company. It's a retail incubation team. So to Lisa's point, there's a lot of people out there that have a great product, but they've not necessarily opened up a store before. So we, between the on-site management team and our WS retail incubation team, we help them bridge that gap from how this great product that I have to getting a store open. And we help them do everything between creating websites to, outfitting the store and pulling the store together, the POS system. So it's, to Lisa's point, there is quite a bit of interest out there with new retailers that I think are going to grow up out of this pandemic. That's exciting for all of us.
I think too, it's try to understand too that, as we're working with some of these new entrepreneurs to get them into, Brian, you mentioned you suddenly have some vacant space, right? So, and your incubation team is working to get these folks in there, but there's still a high barrier. So we have to work with them on rents. We have to work with them on how to operate, but there's still high cost to, electricity and gas and HV. Always that easy where you can just pop them in a box and say, okay, it's time to operate. It does take quite some wherewithal for them to have the sustenance to be able to operate well. And it does take a lot of landlord hand holding and guidance and because our goal is to incubate them into those folks that'll stay more than a year or 2 years. We want them in 5-year, 10-year leases at market rate rents, and that takes a lot of effort to go from point A to point B. So kudos to you guys, Brian.
Well, all those are important points. Let me just add one other opportunity. I do believe now is better, more than many years. We're going to see more entrepreneurs coming out and looking at the opportunities to take that risk, that financial risk, and open up that shop or that restaurant that maybe they dreamed about for years, but the cost barriers were just too much. There are some opportunities, I think, this year, Courtney. There's a whole lot of money with no strings attached that's coming into the state, to our municipalities, and to the state itself out of Congress. And we're talking billions of dollars. The state, it's $4.5 billion. Now, I frankly hope some of that goes to mitigate the UI tax problem that you're probably reading about now. But the billions more that are going to our communities. And we would like to see some partnerships with the cities and towns and the state to invest some of that money in some of these startups, some of these local small businesses, to try to create the right mix of small businesses in a shopping district on Main Street. And some of that can be, grants to help them out for X number of months of rent, some build outs, some facade improvements, signage and the like. And it creates an opportunity to build some new life and attract more small businesses and more consumers to some of these shopping districts. I think it's a good opportunity that some of our government officials need to seize upon in this year.
Great, those are all great points. We have one last question and then we'll wrap up for today. But John, you're probably I'm guessing you might know the answer to some of this. Otherwise, if anyone has heard some suggestions, please feel free to hop in. But the comment/question is: Attleboro, Massachusetts mayor offered free rent in downtown empty storefronts after an entrepreneurial contest. Are other town city leaders willing to support both landlords and emerging businesses? And I'll just add on: have you seen that in other areas that you've worked, or have you heard of any of that in your work, John?
I hadn't heard that yet, but I guess that's encouraging. I would like to see more local governments look at some of this new revenue that they're receiving, and maybe some matching funds from the state money that they're receiving, and work with the landlords to kind of have some shared responsibility on all this to bring in some new entrepreneurs and more diversity into some of these shopping districts. I think it's a great opportunity and an opportunity that just doesn't come at us very often. And there's going to be a whole lot of demands for a lot of that money. I can't think of a better reason or a better focus for investing in our main streets and our communities, our shopping districts, and making sure that, you know, our existing small businesses have a shot at continuing, because they need other, you know, new options coming into the same area that will also attract those consumers. I hope our elected officials at the state and local level will seize upon those type of models. You know, I serve on a Main Streets organization in Beverly, and for years we've done a lot of private fundraising to do exactly that type of thing. And sometimes you can do that, sometimes you can't, through local banks and others. But there's now a great deal of government money that can, you know, really move these type of projects forward.
Thank you. All right. Well, I'll open the floor for any last comments from the panel. Anyone have any last comments they'd like to share with the audience?
You know, I think for me, I just want to add a little bit on to what John was saying, and it's, you know, just a, you know, I wouldn't, for anyone that's looking to open a store, that entrepreneur, you know, I love that Attleboro is doing what they're doing, but don't be afraid to ask your landlord, right? Because, you know, to Brian and to Ed's point and to Lisa's point, you know, we're willing to work with these businesses. We're willing to, you know, go as far as build out costs, you know, and if there isn't any money at that time to do that, looking at rent abatements or rent deferrals. So there's, I think a lot of people are afraid to ask those questions in fear of the answer being no. But I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to bet this panel could probably agree with me, is that the answer is more likely going to be yes than it is no, because we don't want to see empty spaces. We don't want to see, you know, because an empty space doesn't just hurt us. It hurts the businesses that are on both sides of them, right? So if we can do something to put somebody into a space that's going to benefit that person as well as the two businesses on each side or across the street from it, that's a huge win for everybody. So my parting words are, don't be afraid to ask the question.
I think, Courtney, just to kind of expand on what David said, even from our perspective in Hanover, you know, we were owned by the bank for 6 years. So, you know, we had a mall, an interior mall that was suffering, and, you know, Bryant's Derby Street was knocking it out of the ballpark. And, you know, we had our neighboring retail developers like the Target Center, the developer there, Josh Katz, and I'm pretty close with. And Josh was kind enough to come to all of our public meetings and support his, express his support for our development, because it's not only if the, you know, behemoth Hanover Mall is dying in your neighborhood, that's not going to bode well for your neighboring properties. So, you know, guys like Josh saw the light of coming to our meetings to support our success, because the success of Hanover Crossing will yield further success for the Target development and the Michaels development across the street. It just kind of, it should roll in a positive way for all those involved. It creates a better, you know, competitive environment, but competition is good and it's healthy.
So great. Great. Well, I just want to thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Brian, Lisa, David, Ed, John, for sharing your expertise and for giving us some updates on your projects that you're working on. We really appreciate your time. I'm going to turn the floor back over to my colleague, Rick Kaplan at the New England Real Estate Journal to close us out for today. Rick, it's yours. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Courtney.
Thank you, Courtney. I don't know. I'm having some problem. I don't know if, oh, there we go. Yeah, I'm sure everyone wants to see my face. I want to thank everyone. Great panel discussion. In, you know, the past 3 panels or series or episodes or whatever you want to call these webinars have been incredible information. We've gotten an incredible response from our attendees. They love the content, and it's great to get all that information out. That's what's going on the South Shore. And believe me, we got a lot of that information out. I appreciate everyone participating in this. I want to thank our sponsors again. I want to thank all of our attendees for participating in this as well. And I want to mention before I thank our sponsors that next week on the 22nd at 9 o'clock, we will be doing networking to complete finalize all of this series on the South of Boston area. So if you are interested, you'll be receiving a link to the networking in your email. So look for it and please do join us. We have a lot of fun, a lot of great contacts are made. So we'll look forward to seeing you then. I'd like to mention again, I'm Rick Kaplan. I'm from the New England Real Estate Journal, and I want to thank the South Shore Chamber of Commerce. I want to thank Courtney, Bergot, and Peter Foreman and the Chamber staff. They are an incredible group, great to work with. I don't need anyone else to work for. I got enough people I'm working for. So I want to thank them. Great organization, and I know a lot of the members will agree with that. Now I'd like to thank all of our sponsors, platinum sponsors, Ellis Realty Advisors, A.W. Perry, Atlantic Mechanical Contractors, our gold sponsors, Acela Construction Corporation, Rockland Trust Bank, Jack Conway Realtors, Green International Affiliates, Axiom Architects, Norel Service Company, our corporate sponsors, Inspired Technology, U.S. Pavement, Cape Cod 5, First Citizens Federal Credit Union, and Platinum Partners, and Northmark. And again, please join us on the 22nd at 9 a.m. for networking. And I can't thank you all enough. Great content, great panel today, and we'll hopefully see most of you next week. Have a great day.